So the Bible's full of contradictions. Quote, there are at least two possible solutions to this. It could have been a copyist error, or it could have been that the molten sea ordinarily contained 2,000 baths, but when it was filled to capacity, it received and held 3,000 baths. Unquote. Well, he's wrong on both counts. First, does he have any evidence whatever that there is a copyist mistake? No, he doesn't. And until he does, the contradiction remains. Second, the text says nothing about one of the baths being filled to capacity. There is no distinction whatever made between the two baths. And the two texts involved, have almost precisely the same words. Apologists constantly rely upon interpolation. That means the reading of words into the text between the lines. They rely upon this as a means by which to escape what is otherwise a dead end. If the text doesn't say what they like, then they'll just put in words that do. How's that for an out? In this case, for instance, the one I just mentioned earlier, the text says nothing about one of the bowls being filled to capacity. But that's no problem. Just put it in anyway. That's typical of their strategy. 2 Samuel 8:4 says 700 horsemen, while the same account in 1 Chronicles 18:4 says 7,000, not 700. 2 Kings 8:26 says Ahaziah was 22 years old when he began to reign, while 2 Chronicles 22:2 says he was 42. As a fundamentalist minister admitted to me during a radio debate I had with him in the city of Cincinnati many years ago, he stated, obviously it can't be both. And with that I couldn't agree more. In his book, Apologist Arndt says that there is a disagreement between these two texts as we read them in our Bible at present seems to be undeniable. Unquote. And notice he says undeniable. He continues, in all probability, 2 Chronicles 22:2 contains a copyist error. And it's not a far-fetched assumption that a scribe, in copying Chronicles through an oversight, wrote 42 instead of 22. Unquote. In other words, to go to the crux of the matter and cut through all the verbiage, Arndt admits there's a contradiction, and he can only think of this copyist error excuse as a way out. This problem presents another horrible dilemma for the Bible's defenders. In his book, biblicist Johnson describes the problem. Quote, according to the first reference, Ahaziah was 22 years old when he began to reign after his father. But the second reference says he was 42. His father, King Jehoram, died at age 40, according to 2 Chronicles 21:20. If the second reference is correct, King Ahaziah would be 2 years older than his father. Unquote. Or stated another way, how could a 42-year-old man take over from his father when his father just died at age 40? To say this is a mystery is an understatement. Johnson concludes, quote, it is undeniable that there is a seeming contradiction between the two reports. The solution to the problem comes when we realize that there is a copyist error, unquote. Where have we heard that excuse before? In essence, he admits there's a contradiction and again tries to pawn it off on the usual copyist error excuse for which there's not a bit of evidence. He later submits the standard proviso for which there is no corroboration either, that, quote, the original manuscripts, that is the autographs, were and are inerrant, unquote. We'll discuss these alleged original writings, that is, the autographs, much more thoroughly in a later program. To move on, 2 Samuel 6:23 says Micah, or Michael, never had any sons, while 2 Samuel 21:8 says you had 5 sons. 2 Samuel 24:9 says 800,000 men drew the sword in Israel, while the same account in 1 Chronicles 21:5 says it was 1,100,000, a difference of 300,000 men. That can't be attributed to one figure being rounded off, as some apologists allege. You don't round off 300,000 people. Moreover, the figures are already rounded off to the nearest 100,000. In regard to other conflicting accounts, 2 Kings 25:8 says the 7th day, while Jeremiah 52:12 says it was the 10th day, in precisely the same story. 1 Kings 9:23 says 550 chief officers, while the same story in 2 Chronicles 8:10 says it was 250 chief officers, not 550. 2 Kings 24:8 says Jehoiachin was 18 years old when he began to reign, while 2 Chronicles 36:9 says he was 8 years old, not 18. And 2 Kings 24:8 says Jehoiachin reigned 3 months, while 2 Chronicles 36:9 says he reigned for 3 months and 10 days.